Respected viewers, beloved listeners, dear family of dreamers, thank you for being here. Take a breath with me, let the noise of the world soften, and allow this moment to be a quiet conversation between your ambition and your destiny. Before we begin, let me offer you a truth I've learned from a lifetime of watching fortunes rise and fall sometimes. Your entire future hinges on a single decision you haven't made yet. A moment of clarity you haven't reached, a shift in mindset that turns struggle into inevitability. And if you listen closely today, you may feel that shift beginning. Well, now, my friends, there's a profound idea circulating in the minds of the wise. You only need $1 million to quit working forever in 2026. A simple sentence, yet it carries the weight of hope, fear, discipline, and dreams deferred. But let me tell you something essential. Most people don't fail because the goal is too big. They fail because the goal doesn't feel real, not yet. Today, I want to make it real for you. You see, for many years, I watched people chase money the way a drowning man grabs for air, frantic, desperate, and gasping. I've seen parents working 2 jobs and still going to bed anxious students, burying themselves in debt dreamers, starting small businesses with more courage than capital. And through all those stories, one lesson repeated itself: wealth isn't built by those who move the fastest, but by those who stay the longest. Let me share something with you. Years ago, I knew a young man who worked in a tiny repair shop. His hands were always covered in grease, but his mind was sharp as a blade. Every month, he'd set aside a small portion of his earnings, not because he was making much, but because he believed his future self deserved at least that much respect. He invested slowly, quietly, while the world around him shouted about shortcuts and miracles. And while most people joked that he was too frugal, he just smiled. By the time he reached his mid-40s, he wasn't rich, but he was free. Not glamorous, not flashy, but free. Because patience, when combined with consistency, becomes a force of nature. That is the mindset I want you to carry when you hear the words $1 million. Not fear, not disbelief, not pressure, but purpose. Think about 2026 for a moment. It's close enough to feel possible, yet distant enough to reshape your habits. Imagine building a portfolio, whether in index funds, a simple rental property, dividend stocks, or a business that compounds slowly, that pays you every month. Imagine your money working the morning shift while you sleep in peace. Imagine looking at your bank account and feeling calm instead of dread. But it starts with something incredibly small: a choice, a routine, a dollar saved instead of wasted, a calculation made instead of avoided. A moment where you decide that financial freedom isn't a fantasy reserved for the lucky, but a destiny waiting for the patient. Let me share another story. I once watched a man lose nearly everything in a market downturn. His business collapsed, his investments halved, and for a time, he felt ashamed to even look at his financial statements. But instead of quitting, he did something extraordinary. He treated the loss as tuition. Tuition for the kind of wisdom you can't buy in books. And slowly, intentionally, he rebuilt. This time with humility, discipline, and respect for the long game. Within a decade, he had surpassed everything he'd lost. And he told me something I've never forgotten. Wealth is not built by avoiding pain. It's built by surviving it. So when we ask whether $1 million can truly set you free by 2026, remember, it isn't just about the number. It's about who you must become to reach it. Someone disciplined. Someone patient. Someone who understands that every dollar has a job and every month has a lesson. If you've ever struggled, ever faced an empty bank account, ever wondered whether you were falling behind, hear me now, you are not behind. You are simply at the beginning of your compounding story. And if you start today, even with something small, the future version of you will look back with gratitude instead of regret. When we left off, we were standing at the doorway of an idea. That becoming the kind of person who can build, hold, and live off $1 million is far more important than the money itself. Now let's walk through that doorway together. My friends, wealth has a quiet rhythm, the kind you only notice when you learn to slow down. Most people don't hear it. They're too busy chasing noise. The next hot stock, the next overnight success, the next rumor promising impossible returns. But the wealthy, the truly free, they operate on a different wavelength. They understand a timeless truth: money is not earned in chaos. Money grows in calm. Let me tell you about a woman I once knew, a teacher. Not a high-income professional, not a business owner, just a patient steward of her modest salary. She invested every month as though she were planting seeds in a garden she might not see bloom for decades. She ignored every market crash, every headline screaming fear, every coworker telling her she was wasting her time. She simply kept planting, and over the years her garden grew. By the time she reached retirement, she didn't just have $1 million, she had peace. And peace, my friends, is the real dividend. This is why 2026 matters. Not because the world will magically change, but because you can. The path to quitting work forever with $1 million is made of 3 pillars: consistency, compounding, and clarity of purpose. Consistency is unglamorous. It doesn't create flashy stories or dramatic headlines. It simply compounds quietly in the background, turning every decision into a brick in the foundation of your future freedom. Compounding is the closest thing to magic the financial world has ever known. It's the force that takes small beginnings and turns them into empires, if you allow time to do its part. And clarity of purpose, that's the North Star, because money without purpose becomes noise. But money with purpose, it becomes freedom. When you imagine quitting work forever, don't imagine laziness or escape. Imagine waking up without urgency, without a clock chasing you, without a boss defining the limits of your day. Imagine pouring your time into what matters: family, health, passion projects, a business you love instead of a job you endure, a life crafted with intention rather than obligation. But the journey isn't only about dreams. It will test you. You'll face months when the market drops and fear whispers in your ear. You'll have friends who mock your long-term vision. You'll question yourself more than once. And you will need resilience, the kind forged by challenges, not comfort. Let me share one more story. I once watched a young entrepreneur start a tiny online business. At first, it made almost nothing, barely enough to cover its own expenses. His friends called it a waste of time. His family asked when he'd get a real job. And each night, he wrestled with doubt. But he kept improving one small step every week. He treated every failure as data, every success as proof that the slow path is still a path. Years later, that same modest business took him across the 7-figure mark. Not because it was extraordinary, but because he stayed consistent long after others gave up. That's the kind of spirit that builds $1 million. Not luck, not timing, not genius, just unwavering persistence. If you're listening to this, perhaps something inside you knows you're meant for more. Not greed, not vanity, but a longing for autonomy, a longing to break the cycle of trading hours for dollars, a longing to make decisions from strength, not fear. And you can get there, even if you're starting late, even if you're starting small, even if you've made mistakes, especially if you've made mistakes. Just imagine this: a portfolio structured for sustainable withdrawals, dividends covering your monthly needs, a rental property generating cash flow, a business paying you even when you sleep. That's the architecture of freedom, and 2026 not far away. Your habits between now and then, your discipline between now, and then your belief between now, and then will determine whether that year becomes another point on a calendar, or the moment everything changed. Now we enter the final stretch, the part where numbers meet destiny, where the life you dream about begins to feel tangible. Stay with me, inhale slowly. Let your mind settle into the possibility that your financial future is not a distant fantasy, but a story already unfolding within you. Let's talk about the million itself. Not the symbol, but the structure. For most people, $1 million sounds like a mountaintop. But in truth, it's a bridge from a life of labor to a life of choice. And a well-built million, invested wisely, can carry you across that bridge without fear of falling. Imagine a simple balanced portfolio, nothing extreme, nothing exotic. Perhaps a blend of broad index funds, dividend producers, maybe a small slice of bonds or real estate. At a conservative 4% withdrawal rate, $1 million can provide $40,000 per year, enough for many individuals to live modestly, simply peacefully. And if you've built streams of passive income, rental cash flow, digital assets, a small business, that million becomes the foundation, not the finish line. But let's step away from charts and percentages for a moment. Because wealth isn't measured only by what you can spend. It's measured by what you can feel. the freedom to take a morning walk without rushing, the freedom to choose kindness over survival, the freedom to spend time with your children while they're still children, the freedom to slow down enough to hear your own thoughts again. That's what you're really building toward. Not extravagance, but sovereignty. And yet the journey to that sovereignty requires a mindset shift so profound that it separates the dreamers from the doers. You must learn to delay gratification. You must learn to endure boredom. You must learn to love the quiet, steady path. Because wealth creation is not loud, it is patient. Let me share one final story. There was once a man who spent decades chasing quick riches. Every year a new scheme. Every year a new disappointment. He was always sprinting but never arriving. One day, exhausted and defeated, he sought advice from an older investor, someone calm, someone grounded. He asked, "What's the fastest way to wealth?" And the elder replied, "Fast. The fastest way is slow, because slow is the way that actually works." It took him years to understand that message. But when he finally embraced it, when he simplified, invested consistently, and let time do its work, he realized something remarkable. The moment he stopped chasing wealth, wealth started coming toward him. That is your challenge between now and 2026, to stop sprinting, to start building, to honor the process instead of rushing the reward. And if you do, $1 million will not feel like an impossible dream. It will feel like a natural result of the person you've become. So ask yourself, what small habit can you commit to today? What wasteful expense can you trim? What investment can you automate? What skill can you sharpen? What business idea can you revisit? What financial boundaries can you strengthen? Because freedom isn't a future event. It's a daily practice. And when 2026 arrives, as it will faster than you expect, you may realize that quitting work forever was never just about the money. It was about reclaiming your life one decision at a time. Beloved listeners, take one more slow breath. Let the noise fall away and let the meaning settle in. You've walked through visions of freedom, lessons carved from struggle, stories of patience, discipline, and resilience. You've felt the weight and the wonder of realizing that $1 million, this symbol of independence, is not a fantasy reserved for the fortunate, but a milestone shaped by the quiet strength within you. Now hear this truth clearly: wealth is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of choice. If you build it with intention, if you grow it with wisdom, if you protect it with humility, then that million becomes something deeper. It becomes a foundation upon which your best life can finally stand. Picture your future self for a moment. The version of you who no longer wakes up to anxiety, who no longer checks the clock with dread, who no longer questions whether they are falling behind. That self is calm, grounded, at peace. Not because life is perfect, but because life is yours again. And that is what you've been working toward all along. Remember the lessons you've gathered here. That consistency builds confidence. That compounding rewards the patient. That clarity of purpose keeps you steady through storms. And that every struggle in your past was quietly preparing you for the discipline required to secure your future. You are not too late. You are not underqualified. You are not excluded from the possibility of freedom. You are becoming someone capable of sustaining it. So from this moment forward, walk with intention, spend with awareness, invest with calm, grow with humility, and dream with courage. Because courage is the first deposit your future self ever receives. And when 2026 arrives, you may look back on this moment, this very moment, as the day you began building not just wealth, but a life of abundance, purpose, and inner peace. May your path be steady, may your mind stay clear, and may your future rise to meet the strength you are choosing today. You are ready. Your freedom is waiting, and your million is simply the beginning.